The woman, who had just been intimate with her boyfriend, accidentally caught a glimpse of the homeless man downstairs, who actually merged with the road surface. Just as she was shocked by the sight in front of her, she was unaware that another eye had quietly grown on the wall behind her. Immediately afterwards, the entire apartment building came to life. The original corridors turned into intestinal tracts, and the rooms turned into large stomach pouches. All living creatures would become. Its delicious meal time went back to a few weeks earlier. In an apartment in Belgium, a man named Nick was working from home. Just then, his phone suddenly rang, and surprisingly, it was a call from the community. The other party claimed that a strange virus had appeared in the community recently, therefore, it was necessary to conduct an investigation among the residents. Nick was busy with work, so he didn't want to respond to them. However, the other side insisted that this was very important. Out of curiosity, Nick turned on his computer and found that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention had indeed issued an emergency notice not long ago. It stated that a special virus was spreading across Europe. The information showed that in the early stage, many small fleshy bumps would appear on the bodies of infected people. As time passed, these fleshy bumps would undergo different differentiation results. They might turn into woodinization or turn into mineralization. The CDC believed this was an infectious skin disease. The specific cause was temporarily unknown. Moreover, there were no treatment methods available at present. Upon seeing this, Nick thought of his girlfriend Mia, who was still out at a party. He hurried to call his girlfriend and told her to be more careful outside. After hanging up the phone, Nick hurried into the bathroom and carefully checked every detail of his body. Only after confirming that there were no small fleshy bumps mentioned in the notice did he finally breathe a slight sigh of relief. But just at this moment, suddenly, Mia's voice came from outside the door. Nick was startled. Later, he checked through the peephole to confirm that it was indeed his girlfriend outside before daring to open the door. He couldn't understand why his girlfriend, who was supposed to be at the party outside, had shown up at his doorstep with her belongings. After finding out, the community where Mia lived was about to be locked down due to the virus, so she hurriedly packed various supplies and came to live with Nick. This way, the two of them wouldn't have to be separated. Nick originally wanted to first check if Mia had any infected small fleshy bumps on her body, but Mia couldn't wait to pounce on Nick, wanting to have a deep intimate moment with him. After a moment of passion, Nick finally had time to check Mia's physical condition. Only after confirming there were no infected small fleshy bumps did he feel relieved. Again, just then, the two heard the siren of an ambulance outside. Looking out the window, they saw a large team of rescuers gathering downstairs from their building, and in the middle of the rescuers was a homeless man. It was just that at this moment, he had already undergone severe mineralization due to the virus infection. But what Nick couldn't understand was why the homeless man had merged with the ground. The rescuers tried to pull him out, but whether they pulled the homeless man or crushed the surrounding ground, it seemed to cause the homeless man immense pain. In the end, they had to give up the rescue. While the two were focused on watching the rescue downstairs, they completely failed to notice that an eye had somehow appeared on the wall behind them. That night, the CDC updated its notice. It stated that after research, they had discovered the cause of woodinization and mineralization. In fact, this virus causes humans to merge with their surrounding environment. If an infected person comes into contact with stone, mineralization will occur, and they will eventually become a stone person. There is currently no solution. After seeing this notice, Nick realized that this virus might last for a long time, so he went downstairs to the supermarket and bought a large amount of supplies, enough for the two of them to live in the apartment for a long time. Later, he completely sealed the doors and windows with wooden planks and carried out a thorough disinfection of the house, trying to isolate the terrifying virus. But was this method really useful? It was temporarily unknown for the time being. After finishing all this, Nick called his other friends and advised them to go back and take protective measures as well. It's just that those friends were in the middle of a carnival at that time, and didn't take Nick's words seriously. After hanging up the phone, Nick and Mia were trapped in the apartment, waiting for further developments. However, the situation was far worse than Nick had imagined. In just 2 days, this strange virus had completely spiraled out of control. Previously, it had only been raging in Europe, but now the entire world had fallen. Among them, Nick's hometown, France, was in the worst condition. The infection rate had exceeded 98%, and almost the entire country had fallen. For this reason, countries around the world had activated emergency plans. Everyone was quarantined at home and not allowed to leave without permission. But because the staff were also infected, there was basically no one to manage those who were trapped at home. Before long, the city also began to have various problems due to lack of maintenance. The first problem to occur was a power outage. People called to complain one after another, but the staff answering the calls there had also been infected. Fortunately, Nick and Mia had prepared in advance. With a little modification, they turned the bicycle they used for daily exercise into a simple generator. This way, they barely managed to keep the various devices in the apartment running. But this was only the beginning of the disaster. Shortly afterwards, the signal and network also developed problems. People's mobile phones and computers became nothing but useless bricks, completely useless, just as Nick and Mia were feeling down, because they had lost access to the network and couldn't find out about the outside world. A greater danger had quietly befallen them. Mia accidentally noticed that there was a small, unremarkable stone on the floor that hadn't been there before. She originally thought it had fallen from the wall, so she didn't pay much attention to it. Shortly after she had just taken it away, another small stone unexpectedly appeared again in that spot. This made Mia couldn't help but feel a little confused. She curiously got down on her knees to check, but was so scared that she screamed out loud. When Nick heard the scream, he rushed to the bedroom immediately, and there he saw a terrifying sight. Nick recognized that the petrified person was the homeless man, who had been downstairs earlier. Nick was about to take Mia out of the bedroom. Just at this moment, the stone figure that the homeless man had turned into suddenly launched an attack on the two of them. Nick desperately tried to open the door, only to find that the bedroom door was as if sealed shut. No matter how hard he banged on it, there was no response at all. Mia quickly made a decision, picked up an iron rod, and fought the stone figure with all her might. She found that ordinary attacks had almost no effect on the stone figure. In the chaos, Nick was grabbed by the stone figure and then wrapped up in stone. Mia changed her approach, stabbed the stone figure's eye with a dagger, and only then managed to save Nick. But by this time, he had already fallen into a coma. When Nick woke up again, he was already in bed. Mia tried to clean his wounds and found that in just a short moment, the pieces of stone had already begun to merge with Nick's body. After hesitating for a moment, Mia finally made up her mind. She forcibly tore off the pieces of stone from Nick. The process was extremely painful. Nick couldn't help but let out cries of agony. By this time, the painkillers at home had already run out. Mia could only ask their neighbor Helen through the ventilation duct if she had any extra painkillers. Unfortunately, Helen didn't have any extra painkillers either. Moreover, Helen told Mia that her pet golden retriever was missing, and hoped that Mia could help look for it. At this moment, she was busy taking care of her boyfriend. How could she have time to worry about this, even though there were no painkillers? Mia couldn't just stand by and watch her boyfriend be assimilated, so she forcibly tore off the remaining pieces of stone. The intense pain knocked Nick unconscious on the spot. Seeing her boyfriend's condition, Mia felt extremely anxious. She wasn't sure if her boyfriend would be infected because of this. Fortunately, Nick was lucky and didn't get infected. After resting for 2 days, his wounds had initially healed. During these difficult days, the only hope the two of them had was pinned on the CDC, so they would often use that simple generator to turn on the radio and TV, hoping to get the latest news. But unfortunately, so far, communication had still not been restored. Therefore, they still had no idea about the situation outside. This oppressive life made both of them feel desperate. Just then, the TV suddenly got a signal, but as they looked at the images on the screen, there was no joy at all in their hearts, because the CDC had also fallen. This meant they had completely lost all hope. Nick and Mia stared blankly at the images on the TV, as if their souls had left their bodies. But just at this moment, faint sounds suddenly came from the direction of the window. Thinking it might be other survivors, the two of them hurried over to check. They found there was nothing outside. The two of them subconsciously thought they had misheard, but then they heard that strange sound again. Only then did they finally realize that the source of the sound was the wooden planks sealing the window. Somehow, neighbor Helen's pet dog had merged with the wooden planks. The next second, the dog suddenly controlled the wooden planks and launched an attack on the two of them. Nick and Mia hurriedly fled out of the room and hid in the wardrobe in the hallway. Listening to the collision sounds outside, the two of them were filled with panic and could only hold each other tightly. After an unknown amount of time, the sounds outside finally faded away. But the crisis wasn't resolved because of this, because Nick and Mia found that the wardrobe they were hiding in was slowly shrinking at this moment. It squeezed them so tightly that they couldn't even catch their breath. Then they saw that an eye had appeared on the wardrobe at some point. Obviously, the wardrobe was also undergoing fusion. Nick hurriedly slashed at that eye with a kitchen knife, then took Mia and fled. The two of them only then realized that the wooden planks the dog had merged with had disappeared by this time, most likely having escaped on its own. The two had to quickly find something to block that spot again, to prevent the virus from spreading in. But before that, they had to consider another even worse situation. Their food was about to run out. If they couldn't find new supplies, they would probably starve to death before getting infected. After hesitating for a long time, Nick decided to take the risk of going out to look for food. Just at this moment, he was horrified to find that small fleshy bumps had appeared on Mia's body. Nick knew his girlfriend had already been infected, and she would be assimilated soon too. Unwilling to accept this fact, Nick hid alone in the bathroom and cried. Just then, he suddenly heard neighbor Helen's voice. which was coming from the sewer. Helen persuaded Nick to take it easy, for all living creatures couldn't avoid being assimilated. During their conversation, Nick learned that Helen had already been assimilated by the sewer. Helen claimed that everyone would become part of the apartment. If Nick didn't want to stay here, the only option was to escape the apartment quickly. Perhaps Helen's words awakened Nick. He hurried to the bedroom, ready to take Mia and escape the apartment, only to find that in those few minutes, Mia had already started to be assimilated with the sheets. Nick tried to cut the sheets into pieces to help Mia break free from the assimilation, but every time his scissors came down, Mia would let out a cry of pain. It seemed the sheets had already become part of Mia's body. As time passed, those sheets even began to bleed. At this moment, Nick panicked. He knew that if he kept cutting, Mia would definitely die from excessive blood loss. Just then, Nick suddenly realized his pillow was made of the same material as the sheets. He hurriedly placed the pillow on Mia's body. The next second, something magical happened. Mia actually absorbed the pillow, and the original wounds healed instantly. Nick had no idea how to save his girlfriend. The only thing he could do was accompany Mia through this final part of her journey. Soon, Mia merged with the sheets. Before disappearing, Mia told Nick to escape the apartment quickly, but by this time, the outside world had also completely fallen. Even if Nick escaped, where would he go? Just as Nick was grieving over Mia's complete disappearance, he suddenly noticed that the entire apartment was shrinking. There was actually a heartbeat coming from within the walls. Nick realized something was wrong and hurried to escape the apartment. Only then did he see that the apartment had undergone earth-shaking changes. The original corridors had all turned into the intestines of some kind of creature. It was clear that the entire apartment building had now been merged by one of the neighbors. Nick didn't dare to stay any longer and hurried to flee outside, but it was already a bit too late to try to escape now. Nearly all the exits had been blocked. Only one mysterious hole remained, and no one knew where it led. Nick didn't have time to think. He jumped right in, only to fall into a pitch-black space. There seemed to be no way out here. Nick also passed out from the fall. In a daze, he felt as if a hand was stroking his back. Immediately after, he heard a woman's voice. The woman was saying nonsensical things. Nick thought it was just an illusion. When he woke up, he found there really was a woman beside him. She introduced herself as Lisa, also a resident of the apartment building. She told Nick that the virus had now entered its third stage. All assimilated creatures would regain their biological properties once again. In other words, they would come fully alive. At this moment, they were inside the apartment building's digestive tract. If they didn't escape quickly, they would soon be digested and absorbed by the apartment building. But escaping from here was easier said than done. Nick had no idea how to do it, but Lisa said she had a way, as long as Nick followed her lead. So Nick began to copy Lisa's method, stimulating the surrounding fleshy walls. Before long, the originally solid fleshy walls suddenly sprayed out streams of water. The next second, the two of them were swept out of the apartment building by the impact of the water flow. They had escaped successfully, but there was no excitement in either of their eyes, for by this time, the outside world had turned completely yellow, and all the surrounding buildings had transformed into strange lumps of flesh. The entire world had already fallen. Even if they escaped the apartment, they would just be assimilated in a different place. Just then, a drone suddenly appeared in front of them. The machine told them to follow. Obviously, this was other survivors gathering them to meet up. Lisa didn't hesitate and followed the drone, but Nick chose to stay behind. Lisa followed the drone for who knows how long, and more companions joined them along the way. As for Nick, he leaned against the apartment building and waited quietly to merge with it. Maybe he would get to see Mia again. After an unknown amount of time, Nick entered a strange space. Here, he felt as if he was merged with everything in the world. As Nick's consciousness faded away completely, the entire Earth came fully to life. Every substance in the world was undergoing transformation, and finally formed an entirely new world. The film ends here. Else was released in September 2024, as a low-budget horror film. Its theme is quite unique. It adopts a rare Lovecraftian style. There are no specific shapes for the monsters throughout the film, yet even with just simple depictions, one can truly feel the fear brought by these otherworldly beings. In contrast, the plot seems a bit sloppy. Overall, it is a passable work. Today's video ends here. Thank you all for watching. Your likes, comments, and follows are our best encouragement. See you in the next episode.